How's it going, everyone? Nick from Comic Culture here. It's time for Nick at Night, my weekly non-spoiler comic book review show. Just got done reading all my books, so let's get into it right now. So, as you know, I'm going to go ahead and put my grading scale up, and how this works is when I introduce a book, I'm going to put the cover of that book on the grading scale so you can see how it stacks up against the other books. Let's get into the big two as we always do first, starting with a pretty good one. We have Avengers issue number 1, brand new series from Jed MacKay. This one is actually highly anticipated because I like Jed MacKay's Moon Knight run right now, and I'm excited for a new start for the Avengers. You know, I didn't really read Jason Aaron's Avengers, and I've heard some mixed things about it. I think it was time for him to fall off as a general consensus, and it took the Avengers in an interesting place. This one is more focused on Carol Danvers trying to put the team back together. What kind of Avengers team does she think we need to have? And so this is that right here. It was a pretty interesting storytelling motif here. So we basically have a big giant threat. We have our Avengers team one by one as they're introduced on the team, helping out in this giant battle. So like there's a lot of interesting storytelling tactics inside of here. They're building the team and fighting this big threat at the same time. There's like a page or two about how she's recruiting people on the team. My only gripe is like the people she chose for the team are pretty straightforward. Like if you were anybody that just got out of watching the movies and you were like, hey, who do you think is this new Avenger team? You'd probably be right if you had to guess these people. So not a lot of surprises from like a roster's perspective, but I like the storytelling. I like the art in here. The ending had a pretty interesting hook as well. So I'm excited for the Avengers going forward. I'll definitely be checking it out. Great writer, great artist, decent start to the run. What do you guys think? Next up, we have Gary Dugan on X-Men issue number 22. I thought I fell off of this, to be honest with you. I've been reading some of the events that have been going on, like Axe Judgment Day, and then we have the Sins of Sinister, things like that. But X-Men seems to be living kind of on its own right now with some other X-Men characters handling different types of things, teaming up with like Captain Marvel and stuff like that to take on the Brood and whatnot, but it seems to be pretty immune to the big events that are going on right now. So if you're into that kind of stuff, maybe you're gonna love X-Men. And I kind of like it and dislike it for that reason. It's really kind of weird. I'm trying to figure that out. But issue number 22, it's a pretty good issue. We basically have Orcus with like MODOK and all these different people. We have Sinister in here as well, Dr. Stasis, things like that. They're all in this big adventure right now, trying to see how they can manipulate people. Some people have taken this medicine from Krakoa, you know, to help them in whatever way they needed help, but it was kind of laced with this dormant controlling ability that we explore inside of here. And MODOK kind of shows off how much in control he can be of certain people that have taken this medicine. And that was a pretty intriguing thing. I can't wait to see how they're going to explore that in the future. And then we have, you know, Cyclops team coming to the rescue here when there's some kind of a inoculation, some kind of like a mutant removal base kind of set up right here. And they're coming in to save the day of somebody who wanted to get rid of their mutant powers. You know how it is. It's like, I'm kind of ashamed to have these mutant powers, things like that. I want to get rid of them. But like once you're in that place, you might have second thoughts. And so that team comes to the rescue here, and it's pretty cool, which leads them into a very interesting conversation about Wolverine and how many skeletons, literally skeletons, he has laying around right now, and can that be a problem later? I think it's a pretty cool concept. Issue number 22 of X-Men explores a lot of different things. I'm liking it. I'm not liking it. It's a really weird like love-hate relationship with this book right now, but I'd say it's pretty cool. Check it out. Then we have Lansing and Kelly on Guardians of the Galaxy issue number 2. I really enjoyed issue number 1. It was a very interesting, it was like an interesting feel. It was like a spaghetti Western. It was almost like watching an episode of The Mandalorian. We had our team coming on this planet. They were decked out like cowboys, things like that. Mantis was on stage dancing around. We had some pretty cool like character design and things like that. And then they were trying to evacuate the city because they had this planetary destruction coming through in a very familiar form anyway. And they kind of saved the day, and it was really fun. Issue number 2 is obviously the next step in that, but they're kind of hopping around right now trying to warn one of Peter's old friends who's kind of in the military right now that this threat is on their way. There's some double crossing, some backstabbing, things like that, and kind of all hell breaks loose, honestly, there. I didn't enjoy issue number 2 as much as I liked issue number 1. Issue number 1 had like this real fun charm to it that just wasn't there in issue number 2. I will say that if you're interested in the Guardians of the Galaxy humor, you get a piece of that here and there in both of these issues. It's not as sustained as it is through the MCU into the movies, but like there's a hint of it here and there. And I think that's really great that they can bring that level of humor from the big screen into the book itself. But it's just, again, it's not sustained. It's kind of like randomly displaced through there. But it is what it is there. So Guardians of the Galaxy issue number 2, not as good as issue number 1, but if you love the team, if you want to keep track of them, maybe check it out. Next book we had was Fantastic Four issue number 7, Legacy number 700. We actually had Doom on the cover of this book right here. So our Fantastic Four team back together again. They've been back for a few issues now, handling like an interdimensional parasite in the last issue. It almost took out the world. Of course, they figured out some kind of creative way to block out the sun, to kill that. They're actually going somewhere right now. They're actually on the run from Maria Hill and the eyes of like all these different government agencies, because they have a lot of explaining to do, having basically blocked the sun out for part of the country for a few days. It was kind of shocking to everybody. So powers left unchecked, so people need to check up on them. They are on the run, going to someplace very secluded, like cabin in the woods kind of situation. Ben Grimm's aunt actually owns this cabin and kind of drops this line about how the cabin might be haunted, which I thought was really strange. And so we get to understand what this haunting actually is inside this cabin. It kind of like steals your language away from you, and it's very cool storytelling, because every time that they steal like a letter, for instance, from your vocabulary, you can't form words with that letter and you don't remember what you forgot. And so our characters, Reed Richard and everybody, they start slipping on words, and all of a sudden they start slipping on certain letters, things like that, and then it gets progressively worse throughout the whole time until they're left almost hopeless and Doom shows up towards the end. So it's a pretty cool book. Is Doom in charge? Is Doom leading this ghost? Who knows? We're going to figure it out in the next issue. So if you've been digging the vibe, the feel, the storytelling, the kind of like one-off stories that we've seen so far in Fantastic Four, I think you're going to dig this issue. It was pretty good. Doom's there. I can't wait to see what he's up to. Check out number 7. Then we have Ziegler on Miles Morales Spider-Man. This is issue number 6. If you guys are a little bit mad about what Peter Parker's up to, what Spider-Man's up to, dude, check out Miles Morales Spider-Man, because this book is really great. The art is spectacular in here, and the storytelling is really cool too. So really check out this one and just forget about ASM and Spider-Man and all that other crap. Just jump into Miles Morales, because this book has been a lot of fun. Of course, we have Carnage Reigns right now. This is part 2 of 7. I don't know where part 1 started, perhaps in his Carnage Reign run. Here's part 2, though. Messing around with Miles Morales. We have some Scorpion action in here as well, taking down some buildings inside of New York. There's a giant collapse, and so we're trying to save people from the rubble. We're trying to escape this as well, as from like Miles and Scorpion's perspective. We're trying to get out of there before we die. Where's Carnage? He's still out there loose. Almost took everybody out, and so he's extremely dangerous. Art is killer inside this book. This run has been amazing from the art department. The storytelling is great too, because I like Miles's voice. You know, he seems very obviously young, but he's got a lot of humor and he's got a cool perspective. And I just like his power set. I like his voice. I like the way he's written in here, and the art is awesome too. So check out Miles Morales Spider-Man. If you're just like not into the Peter stuff right now, and I don't blame you, dude, you got to be on this book though. All right, we're going to jump over to DC Comics next. We got a bunch of DC books to get through. We're going to start with the Vigil issue number 1 from Ram V. Really looking forward to this one because I'm a big Ram V fan, and his DC work has been great so far. So I don't know much about these characters in the Vigil team right now. What I can perceive though from reading the book is it's basically like another Suicide Squad, Amanda Waller type team, but set overseas. And this team was sent out to rescue something, presumably, or save this boat that was basically attacked by a bunch of pirates. And so this team has been assembled. They've been sent out to the boat to either to save the people or maybe retrieve a valuable artifact for whatever reason. So this is a really cool book, because as they're boarding this ship, they're actually taking a little bit of time and introducing the different characters and their power sets. And so I think it's really good from a first issue perspective, and the art is really complementary to what their powers are. So they did a really good job with that right there. Of course, we get our big splash page here with "Welcome to the Vigil." You can't have a new team and a new base without a shot like that. So props to them for doing that. I would say it's very new reader friendly. You're not very lost. You can understand what's going on. The story is really straightforward. Does it read like a Ram V book? Not quite yet, I would say. If I read this book and I didn't know Ram wrote it, and you asked me, you know, who wrote it, I wouldn't really know who would write this. Now I would say the environment and the character design and things like that in here would lead me in that direction, because it isn't like based in America from what I can tell. So, but with that said, very, very cool. Looking forward to this run. Had a great time reading it. Did you guys read it? What'd you guys think? Superman number 4 from Joshua Williamson. You know, I had to get that Zerdy cover. Absolute fire. This is another really good run. So if you've been staying away from Superman or you're a Superman fan, I think you're going to have a great time reading this one. I think this reads a lot like All-Star Superman. I get that same vibe, especially because it has that like Superman Lex Luthor banter between the two of them. Like Lex is trying to be in his life more, trying to team up with him, things like that. And so it reminds me of All-Star Superman in a way. It's beautifully drawn too. I love this book from the art alone. And so it's really kind of cool. I like this one a lot. If you can tell, it's a real delicate line. The coloring just pops in here. It's just really well drawn. I absolutely love that. But, you know, in classic Lex Luthor form, he's trying to team up with Superman, trying to be his equal or trying to be someone who's useful inside of his life. Even going back, I don't know, retconning, I don't even know if this is retconning or not, but kind of going back in time and saying, you know, I was the city's savior before you came around. I'm going to tell you a little story about all that in here too, which I thought was pretty weird and interesting as well. So Superman is kind of on the case right now. Doesn't know if he can trust Lex Luthor. I mean, do we ever know if we can trust Lex Luthor? But Lex is actually on to something because there's a higher power out there recruiting some very powerful villains like Silver Banshee to attack. And so we get a little bit of that action in here as well, which again, the art is absolutely killer with those scenes. So if you've been digging, if you've wanted to get into a Superman book, if you haven't been digging what you've been reading lately, check out Superman #4. It's really cool. Mark Waid and Dan Mora and Bond Villain on World's Finest, issue number 15. I can't believe we're on issue number 15 already. Another crazy awesome run. The art in here is awesome. It has some like deep cuts, but it won't make new readers lost like myself. I'm just kind of pushed onto the edge of my boundary of what the heck is going on and who the heck are all these people. Bringing in people like Metallo and Metalman. It's just awesome. And what they've been doing, kind of melding some powers together. This is a big detective story. Someone's out there presumably killing people, framing people for murder, things like that. And we're kind of pinning the murder on the wrong people. And so we're trying to figure this murder mystery out. There's a Doom Patrol appearance in here. A bunch of different teams show up inside this book. So I think it's really interesting how they can, you know, stretch out this story over different teams, things like that. Gives you a world perspective. It's a really interesting run. Again, the art is spectacular in here. And I think this book has a lot to offer long-term DC readers and new readers alike. So I think that's a cool thing because a lot of DC books, I feel personally, are not very new reader friendly. Some of the number ones or Batmans and things like that might be okay, but like the majority of DC books, I feel like that come out if you don't have some kind of a broad understanding of like the last 40 years of obscure villains and things like that, you're going to get a lot of things kind of fly over your head. But this book seems to do a pretty good job of balancing that. So World's Finest, a great place to jump in. So I would start with issue number 1. Maybe read some of the Lazarus Planet stuff, but continue on to issue number 15 because this is awesome. All right, we have Batman the Brave and the Bold, issue number 1. Admittedly, I didn't get through this entire thing. This is actually a huge book. I read the first, I think, 3 stories, if I'm not mistaken, and they were interesting. The first story is basically about Joker. It seems like it's in the early days. Batman really doesn't do a whole lot, but it's basically this conversation between Joker and this little girl, and hasn't really made himself felt through the city yet. There's like some unsolved mysteries, things like that, some deaths in the area, but it's a really, really creepy, atmospheric short story, which I thought was great. I like that first part. I honestly could have had a whole issue with Joker talking to this little girl in the way that they did it. It is super creepy. I highly recommend that one for sure. The next one was more about like Dr. Bones or whoever the heck that person is and his like suicide squad going on this mission, trying to take on or trying to stop this jailbreak from this one group that has access to the Speed Force weapons and things like that. That was okay. It was very reminiscent of what we read over in the Vigil or what we see in like any Suicide Squad type thing. It's like I'm kind of over those kinds of stories, to be honest, but there were some cool elements inside there. And then we had some really cool Dan Mora art on another story. It was interesting. If you like a lot of short stories that actually have a decent amount of length to them, check out Batman Brave and the Bold because there's some pretty cool things happening inside there. And I like the different artists and the different writers and the shift in styles and things like that. So not a bad read. I got to finish it though. So let me know which ones I should focus on after that, or if I've pretty much read the best ones. The next DC book we read this week was Dawn of DC Titans, issue number 1 from Tom Taylor. And hot take here, I didn't like Nightwing, and I'm not quite enjoying Titans just yet. It's only 1 issue. We're going to get into it. But basically, I think it has to do with the art style. I just don't like the way the characters look. I just don't like that. Some of the scenes and things like that work, which I think is surprising, but like there's this weird glow and this weird glare and like the faces seem real delicate. Everything seems delicate. I don't understand what's going on there. So I just want more lines, more grittiness, more dark, more atmospheric stuff. But maybe that's not the Titans vibe. Maybe I'm just not, maybe I'm expecting too much from that run. I don't know. But I saw it in Nightwing and I'm seeing it in here too. But So, Titans number 1. What I did like about it was a good showcase of all the different powers against this big threat, right? We're going to move into Titans Tower or Titans whatever, but we got interrupted on moving day, and so we have to take on this big threat, taking out this like reactor, and so we have to do what we have to do to take care of that. I like the display of all their powers. I thought that was really cool. I like the opening. There's a really cool mystery with the Flash in the opening of this book that we then see more of towards the end. We even have some cameos with some other folks that have new series in DC right now. So I think that's going to be a pretty cool thing to explore later. So, really the story was not bad at all. I like, again, the character moments. I like the team ups. I like how they coordinated their efforts, things like that. The art is not my style of art. I just don't like the way everything looks so delicate and clean. I like a little bit more gritty, a little darker comics, I think. But not a bad number 1. I was expecting maybe a little bit more, but maybe not. Maybe this met my expectations, to be honest with you. I know a lot of you guys got Titans number 1. What did you guys think, and what's wrong with me? All right, let's go into some indie books real quick, starting with Maleficent issue number 1 from Dynamite Comics. Now, I remember reading Scar number 1, and I kind of enjoyed it. It was kind of fun to see Scar in between the movies, or, see what else he's got going on. He's attacking some wildebeest. He's being beaten up by Rafiki. And I thought that was pretty cool to see where that went. I haven't picked up an issue since because it didn't really blow me away and the interest didn't really hold me. So I was a little bit hesitant getting inside of Maleficent because I felt like it was going to be maybe along the same lines. It would be interesting to see what happens between movies, between shows, whatever. But is it going to be that interesting? Is it going to be enough to hold my attention? I will say the first thing that popped out about this book was the art in here. It's real dark. It's got a moody atmosphere. I think it's perfect for this kind of a villain, even from the very first page. We have this exiled young man kind of creeping into the forest, seeking power, seeking a way to prove himself. And so he gets into the dark forest here. He falls into a trap and Maleficent comes to rescue him. And basically it's an exchange between those two. It's like she can sense the evilness or the rottenness inside of his character, and she gives him this tool to help bring that out, but it kind of backfires on her a little bit, leading to a point where she has to basically take care of this kid. And I don't mean by babysitting him. So it was a very quick story. There was nothing really to it, honestly. It was like, here's your kid. Here's your couple page interaction. He does something stupid. She comes back to, smack him around a little bit more. So there really wasn't a whole lot to it. There was really no character development, no new surprising, other side of Maleficent that we haven't seen before. So I was expecting a little bit more from this issue. Plus, I feel like it's really short. It's like maybe 2/3 as long as a standard comic. And the back end is just filled with other stuff. I mean, maybe it just seems short. I don't know. But, I mean, they show you all 200 covers on the back here. It's like, we didn't need that. So this book was a little bit underwhelming. You Disney people who love these things might like this. But, for $4, I would just expect more, honestly. Going over to Boom Studios, we have Mosley issue number 4, and I've been liking this a lot. Basically, we have this artificial intelligence eventually taking over the world. We fed it so much data over time that it's taken over everything. Everyone's kind of jacked in, plugged in. We have our guy here, our Mosley character here, who kind of helped the rise of the machines in a way, but has learned his ways since then and is rebelling against it and actually gets imbued with this mystical power to help fight this avatar of technology from city to city. Now his family's been broken up because of this conflict. His wife has left him. His kids kind of joined the technology side because she's blinded by all the promise and everything of the future that this technology is going to bring. But this is kind of the family coming together to join forces against the big bad evil technology in here. If you like God Country style battles, the little guy imbued with power just charging up into the sky, taking on impossible threats, joining his family, kind of pushing through however we can to kind of get to the end. I think you're going to really dig Mosley. The art style is really good inside of here too. So this has been a heck of a read so far, so I highly recommend this one. Check it out. Next Boom book was The Seasons Have Teeth issue number 2 from Dan Watters. Now I didn't like the first issue as much as some other people did. Dan Watters' stuff is kind of hit or miss for me, but I loved issue number 2 because I think I had a lot better appreciation or understanding about what we were getting into versus going into number 1. So basically we have these avatars of the seasons, and they're very destructive forces and they're very elusive, and people have been trying for so long to not only coexist, but really capture the image of them from like a journalist's point of view. And so we follow this older guy right here who's actually going through a lot of regret throughout his life. He may have had like a failed relationship, a deceased partner, and they had this whole life planned ahead of them. But it's actually him kind of recounting some of the memories of this relationship and maybe even fulfilling some of the promises he had set up back then as well. And in the previous issue, we explored the avatar of Spring, and our guy here, our main character, was actually able to take a picture of Spring for the first time. In this issue, our main character is actually going overseas, and he's going to capture Summer, who is a very violent, obviously destructive force, and so we get to see how that plays out. So the Seasons Have Teeth issue number 2, I enjoyed better than issue number 1, again, because I had a different set of expectations going into it. Really cool book, though. Check it out. Next, from Fantagraphics, we have Ed Piskor's Red Room Crypto Killers issue number 1. This is actually a volume 3, number 1, so check out the other volumes. What a crazy, insane thing. So if you didn't know, comics, man, they stretch everywhere. If you like capes and cowls kinds of stuff, you can go in that direction. If you want more of an indie scene, there's a spot for you here. If you're into murder on the internet for fun and profit, hey man, there's a whole series for you here, and there's a volume 3 of it as well. So very cool, banned in 26 countries. I can actually show you a lot of interior pages here because this one's not as gory as some of the other stuff. You're gonna see a really awesome, basically black and white 8-panel grid layout here, which I think is really cool. I like that storytelling pace that gives you. You have a lot of interesting things going on in the panels and stuff. I loved kind of dissecting his art style in here, the different tones that he uses, the different perspectives, things like that. And there's no lazy artwork in here at all, man. This guy's going all out inside this book. This story here, this little girl actually realizes that one of her, I think her father, was actually one of the top Red Room guys out there, made a whole lot of money working for this organization, and he recently has passed, and she finds a way to kind of inherit his wealth, and she's kind of set at the moment, but there's a lot of people interested in tracking her down, stealing that money, and they kind of go against the boss's wishes, and they get caught in doing so, and to the Red Room with you, man. It's really hilarious what happens in here. So not as gory, but definitely as like sinister and twisted as any other Red Room book out there. There's also a little Easter egg in here, a little QR code on one of these pages. If you have the physical copy, go ahead and scan that. It'll take you somewhere you want to be. Trust me, not a Red Room thing. It's not mature. It's somewhere safe, but it's pretty cool. Love Red Room. Love this series. Really cool book. Check this one out. Going over to Image Comics real quick, we have the Book of Necessary Monsters, W. Maxwell Prince, Ice Cream Man, issue number 35. Say that one 10 times fast. Love this book. Our main character in here is a writer. He's actually writing the most important book of all time. Forget about the Bible, forget about the Quran, forget about everything else. This is the most important book that's ever going to be written, because this book outlines all the demons, all the monsters, psychological, physical, anything that you're going to experience inside of your life. So you have to memorize this book. This book has to be in every bathroom stall across America, across the entire world, because this book is the most important. What I love about this, though, is there's a lot of correlation between the monsters that he's describing in here and what's actually happening in this guy's life, to his family, to himself. And this is a very, very intriguing, very deep, very meta, very layered issue, like any other Ice Cream Man book is. This one's a little bit more on the nose, and it's beautiful because of it. In classic Ice Cream Man fashion, a lot of these monsters are monsters that you would recognize from the past issues from Ice Cream Man. So if you explored a monster in one of those issues, he's going to explain it inside of here as well. And there's a little commentary about the current technology that we have, like phones in our hands, the time suck, right? The time suck monster is really bad. There's a pretty interesting story that develops with our writer as well. We're led to believe one thing, but we soon find out towards the end of this book that things aren't quite as they seem. So again, classic Ice Cream Man fashion, a little bait and switch, which I thought was awesome. I love this one. Incredible book. I can't imagine how much like time and energy and like planning it takes to do one of these books. It's absolutely insane. Love it. I think the next one's going to be August, unfortunately. We're like on a quarterly basis with Ice Cream Man, but dude, I'll take whatever I can get. You gotta be checking this out. Next from Image Comics, we have Little Monsters, issue number 13 from Jeff Lemire. Certainly a sad dad story for sure. This series was pretty cool. The buildup was very interesting. I think this would have been a great 8-issue run, honestly. I think 13 stretched it a little bit too far, to be honest with you, but the series still worked for me towards the end. And again, in this series, we explore what it means for these vampires to exist when there's no elder vampires around. They're in a society that was basically wiped out. There's no humans to feed on. So what does that do to a vampire's metabolism? We explore that inside of here. And one of our vampire kids actually knows the full truth of the history of the vampires as well. And he's kind of kept that from the other folks. We, of course, throughout this series get involved with some humans as well. And we see a lot of split, like a civil war happen between our vampires. And, we had to choose sides. Which side are we going to be on? We're going to hunt down some more humans. Are we going to stay close to our roots and follow the rules that we've always followed to stay alive as long as we have? So it creates this gigantic chasm between this team. And that's a pretty interesting thing to try to navigate. And I like the end result of that. The coloring and everything was really cool inside of this book, mostly black and white, but it had splashes of red and other colors where it was really important to see that shock value. So I thought they handled that pretty well. But I personally didn't like the way that it ended. I don't think it hit as well as it should have hit. I don't know exactly where I would have taken this story, to be honest with you, because there's only so many places it could have gone, to be honest with you. And I didn't quite see this ending coming, but I was still intrigued with the issue overall, and it was a pretty good series. So Little Monsters issue 13. If you're a Jeff Lemire fan, I think you're going to dig this, so you might want to check it out. Then the last book we read this week was Good Deeds by Chi Grayson. We also had Kelsey Ramsey and Rhonda Pattinson on this book as well. Across the top, it does say Scott Snyder presents Dark Spaces, and this is Good Deeds. So I'm wondering if this is in the same universe, or maybe they're, putting everything underneath this banner for right now. But it doesn't have anything to do with Dark Spaces Wildfire, which came out a little while ago with Hayden Sherman. But Good Deeds was a pretty interesting book. We have a couple different characters introduced in here in a very interesting art style. Basically, we have this journalist who's kind of running away from past bad decisions in her life. She's kind of given a story right now to explore the legacy and the history of this specific town. And then meanwhile, the B story is we have this family moving in to the same town. They're kind of putting this diner back together, this local diner. And there's a lot of mystery and all this weird history in this town. Is there like a supernatural thing going on? I think we're going to explore that coming soon. There's at least a hint towards that in here as well. The locals are all crazy. Everyone's just trying to navigate right now. There's a lot of foreigners coming into this town that's kind of rich with history, lore, ritual, and obviously something supernatural. So it's pretty intriguing, I think. If you're into that kind of book, I think you're going to dig this one too. There's going to be a horror element to here as well. So interested in Good Deeds, completely off the radar for me. If you guys read this one, let me know what you thought. But guys, that's everything I read this week. I hope you appreciated that. Let me know down below in the comments what your favorite books of the week were. And while you're down there, consider hitting that like button. And if you're new here, consider hitting that subscribe button as well. I would really appreciate it. But as always, thanks very much for watching. Happy reading, and I will see you down below in the comments.